Dave Smith here. So I've finally got round to making some more videos. I've got several ideas. I'm here complete with my post-lockdown haircut. I was a little bit lucky to get in to a barber's yesterday. So I'm feeling much more presentable now. Anyway, I've had to set a timer on my laptop for this because I've noticed that I'm shooting these videos on the Nikon D610, and you might recall that I got rid of the digital equipment because I'm intending to shoot completely in, or almost completely in film. So I traded the Fuji XT because it wasn't going to be doing quite what I wanted of it for this 610, which I'm intending to use for recording these videos and for time lapse. But it turns out it's not actually that good at recording these videos because, like a lot of digital cameras, it's got this time limit on its recording because of EU regulations on taxes and video cameras and so on. But unlike the Fuji, when it gets to the end of its 20 minutes, it doesn't automatically start a new file, or at least I can't see a way to make that happen. And so it turns itself off. So I've had to set this timer. Excuse me. So we'll see how things work out. I might come to a natural point and then break and restart the video and then mash them together, or I might just have to make a sudden break, but we'll see how it works out. Anyway, what we're going to talk about is analog film photography. Excuse me. And my idea is to make a series of videos to help people get started in film photography and then to progress through to advanced techniques. So we're going to start from the very basics. We're going to do an introductory set of videos to get you to a point where you've developed your first roll of film. You've got your set of negatives. And my initial intention with this was that we would then scan those and work on them in the likes of Photoshop. Now, I don't use Photoshop, but something of that ilk. I use Affinity Photo, which is very similar. It just doesn't have that horrendous Adobe rental scheme for its software. But I've actually since rethought that, and I've since decided that I'm going to make this series entirely analog. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through getting the first roll of film out, and then then we'll leave those negatives, and I'm going to go through more advanced techniques, and then when we've done that, I'm going to get into printing these in a darkroom. Now, I'm aware not everybody has space for a darkroom, not everybody has enlargers, and sort of taking that step is a bit more daunting. But I don't want you to be daunted, right? You don't need a lot of space. It's perfectly possible to do this in a temporary way that you can, when you're ready to make prints, you can put it up, set it up, and then put it away again. Enlargers don't have to be expensive, and I'm going to show you that along the way as well. So loads and loads for us to do. We're going to look at the technicalities. We're going to come to understand what all the terminology means and why it is as it is. But we're also going to look at the aesthetics and the art of these images. So we're going to look at sort of composition, for example, and compositional rules and techniques, and what makes for a good black and white photograph, what makes for a good colour photograph, what makes a good photograph. So really a vast amount to come in this series. Now where I thought we would start today is with the equipment, and of course the very basic piece of equipment you're going to need is a camera. And I've got a couple of 35mm cameras here. I've got this one, I'll come back to that in a moment, and I've got this venerable Nikon. Now, I've had the Nikon a little while, and these are beasts of a camera. This is quite heavy. It's about 1 3/4 kilos, I would guess. Haven't weighed it. So anyway, there it is. Now, these will be about 300 or so pounds on eBay. Like most film cameras, they're not made anymore. In fact, I want to say at 35mm, like all film cameras, I'm pretty sure, I'm happy to be proven wrong, but I'm pretty sure nobody is currently making 35mm cameras. So it means you're going to be buying a second-hand camera. And there are issues with that. So I think the F5 was discontinued something like 1996, which makes that a 25-year-old camera at best, and could be 35 years old. This Fujica probably dates to late 60s, so that's getting on for half a century old. Okay, and lots to consider about that. The Nikon F5 was replaced by the Nikon F6, and I believe the Nikon F6 was the last 35mm film camera to be made. I think they discontinued them in 2018. If not then thereabouts. So if you want a relatively new 35mm camera, that's the camera you're likely to have to get. But they are expensive. They were between £2,500 and £3,000 or dollars or euros when they were made, and they are still fetching prices in excess of £1,000 now. And I've taken the view that for this particular series, at the starting point is to keep the costs as low as possible, so that if you're just somebody who wants to have a go and you're not sure it's for you, it's not going to break the bank. And you can try. So who is this series for? Well, maybe it's for somebody who has been taking digital photographs, maybe with a compact, maybe with a mobile phone, but maybe with the likes of a Nikon, and you want to have a go with film. You want that sort of analog experience, and there's definitely an upsurge in the analog experience, not just in photography. You know, vinyl records are definitely making a comeback as well, for example, and that's just to name one other example. I think there is a real upsurgence in the analog experience, and you do get a much better understanding of photography through analog photography. So maybe that's you. Maybe you've never shot photographs at all, and suddenly you've become interested, and your interest is in film photography. Maybe you're an experienced digital shooter, and you are quite knowledgeable about photography, and actually you'd like to switch to film and give it a go. If any of those are you, then this series will be for you. If you are already shooting film, but you want to learn more about it, then the later parts of this series will be for you. But why not stick with us and see what happens and follow along? Okay, so cameras. So there's the first kind of rub, is they're not being made anymore, or certainly not being made anymore in 35mm. I'm pretty sure that in medium format you can still get brand new cameras. I will need to check that. And in large format you absolutely certainly can still get brand new cameras. So, but of course they're very expensive, I mean thousands. So my thinking is that we're going to keep the costs as low as possible to get you started. As we get more advanced, you can change your camera system and you can move on to medium format or large format. You can stick with 35mm but get a more advanced body. That's all up to you. So I went looking because I wanted to find cameras that were cheaper than the sort of £300 for an F5. And in fact, this F5 locked up on me the other day. I took a frame, the mirror wouldn't return and the camera was playing up. Not quite sure what the issue was. I think it might have been the batteries. I have put fresh batteries in now, but it did ruin a roll of film, because I'd only shot 6 or 7 frames on this roll of film, and then I had to rewind it, and it's rewound back into its cassette, so I can't now use it, and that's a little bit irritating. But there it is. So anyway, I wanted to find something that was cheaper than several £100, and that's why I came across the Fujica. This is the Fujica ST605N. Now there are a whole range of these made. There was a 7.0 series, there was a 9.0 series, I think there was a 5.0 series, and logic would suggest that there were even some before that. But this is the one that I found. This cost me £25 with a lens. Now the lens on it is the kit lens that would have originally come with the camera. It's a 55mm f2.2 lens, and if you're not sure what those numbers mean, don't worry, everything will become clear as we go through this series. Now I got that from eBay, and I got this F5 from eBay, but I can't really recommend eBay any longer. I've had a couple of pretty poor experiences with eBay sellers recently, and it is putting me off eBay. It's a very convenient repository for second-hand stuff, but it's getting worse and worse, I think. So, you know, buyer beware. Now, if you are going to buy off eBay, and in fact, if you're going to buy one of these cameras from anywhere, whether it's this one or one of the many others, and let's talk about some of the other options before we get into sort of what to look for when you're buying. There are loads and loads and loads and loads of film camera manufacturers, and Minolta, for example, were very common. Minolta SRT 101, 102, 103, 202, 203, 303. There's a whole range of those cameras. Olympus OM 1234, the Olympus 10, 20, 30, 40 were the consumer models. Pentax had models. I'm not sure what the Pentax naming systems were. Canon, obviously. Nikon, obviously. Loads of them. Now, things to watch for. First off, are batteries. Remember that many of these cameras are getting pretty old, and many of them, the Minoltas and the Olympuses, I believe, used mercury batteries. Now, mercury batteries aren't available anymore because mercury is very, very toxic. And so you need to get a replacement battery. Now, there's no exact replacement because mercury batteries were 1.3 volts and the lithium or silver oxide batteries are 1.5 volts. So that will make the meter in your camera a little bit weird. It won't read quite right. Now, you can get adapters. You can get, there's a company in Britain which I think is called the Small Battery Company. I'll check that and leave a link. That have tables where you can look up the battery that you should have had, the mercury battery you should have had, and it will give you the equivalents that you can use instead. And it will also sell you an adapter to change the voltage so that it will work exactly if that's what you're interested in. So batteries are something to look out for. Lenses are another thing to watch for. With Nikon, for example, they use the same lens mount. Nikon used what's called a bayonet mount, like this. They have these little kind of flanges that the lens is keyed into and then just twists into place. Most camera manufacturers use the bellows system. This one doesn't. This is a screw-in lens. They're a little bit more problematic to change, take just that tiny bit longer, right? So, but who cares? This is what's called an M42 screw thread lens mount, and it literally just screws in. Now, the nice thing about both of these systems is because Nikon used the same lens mount, I want to say since 1957, but could easily have been quite a bit earlier than that even, right up to the very recent mirrorless Z camera. It means that there's, what, 60, 70 years or more of lenses that will fit on your camera. This is an old manual focus 50mm Nikon lens, and it will work perfectly well on that Nikon D610. The 20mm Nikon G lens that's on that D610 will work perfectly well on this F5. Now, not all G lenses will work on all Nikon bodies, because not all the earlier Nikon bodies didn't have the capability to change the aperture on the G lenses. But that's the only issue. Right? If you've got a non-G lens, remember that's the one that a G lens is the one that doesn't have the aperture control ring. Okay. These screw mount lenses are prolific. There were a gajillion of these made, from the very cheap Russian Industar lenses right the way through to Voigtlander Leica type lenses, which are really expensive, and then these Fujica type lenses in between. But M42 screw mount lenses typically are very good. The Industars are excellent lenses. They just didn't have excellent quality control, so there are some bad examples, but a decent one is very good. And there are many of them, millions I would guess, so that's pretty good. Canon changed its lens mounts somewhere along the way at least once, so not all Canon lenses will fit all Canon bodies, irrespective of whether they'll actually work. So those are some things to look for. Now, before I go any further and talk about sort of looking at the condition of the body you're going to buy, I'm going to just pause there so that I can restart the video, because the timer's coming to its 20-minute conclusion. So bear with me, we'll restart and I'll talk about what to look out for. Okay, so here I am back again. Another little sip of my tea. Right, so let's talk about buying a camera, whether you're getting it off eBay, Marketplace, the local thrift store, whatever you're getting. First thing I would say, if you're going to follow along with this series, is don't get an automatic everything camera where you just have to point it and shoot. You want a camera where you can change the aperture, so there's an aperture ring, and that will have numbers on it, something along the lines of f2.8, a 4, 5.6, 8, 11, 16, 22, those kinds of numbers, and they're typically towards the back of the lens like this one, and they typically have a click as you turn them. So here we go. And that click just clicks them into place, tell you by feel which f-stop you're on. So you want one where you can change the aperture. You want a camera where you can change the shutter speed. And that's very often a dial on the top of the camera, and that will have numbers on it that range from around 500, 250, 125, 60, 30, 15, 8, 4 and 2. And it might have a B. And we'll come to what all those numbers mean as we go along. So you want a camera where you can change both of those things, and that will help you as we go through this series to develop as a photographer. So that's the first thing. Now the second thing is, when you are buying the camera, if you let's talk about eBay, because realistically that's probably where most people are getting their camera. I mean, maybe you already have a film camera and it was given to you by a relative and it's been collecting dust in a cupboard, but maybe you have to go out and actually get one. So probably most people are getting them from eBay, but wherever you're getting them from, eBay or Marketplace or the thrift store, you want to get one that looks like it's in good condition. You can't really know what state the internal mechanism is going to be in. You don't know how much use it's had, you don't know how many rolls of film have been through it, and in half a century or more the internal mechanisms could easily be wearing out. Fear not. That's why we buy something cheap. So when I bought this one, I took careful note of the pictures. Now, this particular version is completely unmarked on its top plate. It doesn't quite look like it would come out of the box brand new, but really it's not far off. I did give it a very slight cleaning with isopropyl alcohol when I first got it, but not really much more than that, and just a quick wipe over with a cotton bud. It's in excellent condition as you look at it. Another thing to note is there's a plastic film on the bottom here that's protected the bottom plate. These very often get a little bit scratched, particularly at the tripod mounting point. This has this plastic film that's been protecting it and is still on there from new. When you look at the leatherette covering, right, places to look at are down places like this where the leatherette comes to a stop, and here, is that solid or is it lifting away? Very often on the likes of the Nikons, these later Nikons in particular, this rubberized grip does tend to come away, and you can see just here, right, it's just a tiny bit loose there. All right, now I could glue that down, but it's not enough to worry about. I've seen many, particularly digital Nikons, in pretty poor state in their grips. Now, that's not something to be too concerned about. You can easily buy replacement rubber grips for many cameras. You can buy this stuff and take the old off and put new on. But it is an indication of how well looked after the camera has been, and therefore what its condition is likely to be like. So look for things like that, look for scratches, look for brassing and rubbing of the top coat coming off, just to give you a general sense of the condition of the camera. If you're buying at distance, if you're buying online through eBay, for example, or Marketplace, ask questions like, how crisp is the detents for the aperture f-stops? Do the shutter speeds sound right? Now, you're not asking for a test of the shutter speed, but if it's a half-second shutter speed, does it sound like half a second? As the shutter speeds are increased, does it sound like it's getting faster? Does the focus mechanism work smoothly? Does it have any play? When I turn this, there's absolutely no play whatsoever. As I turn it, the focus changes. There's no looseness in that ring before it kind of engages in what it's supposed to do. All of that will tell you how well looked after this has been. Ask about the lens. Is the glass clear? The three things to watch out for with lenses are haze, fungus, and separation. Now, this is an excellent a lens that's in excellent condition, and if your seller is not sure about those things, well, haze is like a thin film covering the lens front or back. It's a slight problem, but not something to be too worried about. Separation, well, lenses are made up of several elements, and some of those elements can be glued together with what's called a balsam glue. And after sort of 30, 40, 50 years, that glue can break down and those elements can start to separate, and you see it as little kind of patches where the air has got in and the glue started to separate. And then fungus are like little tendrils eating into the glass. You probably don't want to buy a lens that's got much, if any, fungus, to be honest. Haze probably isn't too much of a problem. Balsam separation is probably a problem. So be careful about, because there's so many out there, you don't need to be paying the money for ones that are not in very good condition. And there are loads of these ST605s available. So you should be able to find a really good one. Similarly with the Olympus OM series, the Pentax cameras, the Minolta cameras, but remember, check what the batteries are. You can get replacements, it's just a little bit of a nuisance. Not all cameras do need a battery for their function. When the batteries on this thing ran out the other day, nothing would work. It needs batteries for everything, and that's a nuisance. If the batteries on this run out, the only thing that's not going to work is the light meter, and I'm going to show you ways to not need a light meter in the first instance. And some cameras, I think, I could be wrong about this, but I think the Nikon FE series needs a battery to trip its shutter, but if the battery runs out, the shutter will still work, but only at a 90th of a second, for example. So those are all things to give consideration to. Now, if you've got a camera already and you want to know whether it's suitable, by all means ask. If you're not sure how your camera works and you want some help with that, drop me a comment. If you are looking for a camera and you're not sure whether this or that camera is going to be suitable, then by all means ask. I'll help wherever I can. I don't think you can go far wrong with one of these Fujicas. I was very impressed by the spec of this camera. It's very simple, very basic, and it will do the job nicely. Okay, so that's a little about cameras. Now what else are we going to need? Well, you're going to need some film. Now, we're looking for 35mm film, and we're looking for black and white. My strongest advice, if you're in the UK, is by either Ilford HP4 or Fomapan 100 or Kentmere. I think Kentmere might be more of a US brand, but Kentmere 100 would be good. If you are in the US, then I would suggest you want a roll of TMax, TMax 100 or 400. Going back to the Ilford, you can have FP4 or HP5. HP5 is a 400 rated film. Don't worry about the numbers at this stage. You can also get Foma 400 and Kentmere 400. So either of those will be fine, 100 or 400. In fact, let's keep things simple. Let's say we're going to get 400 film in Ilford HP5, Kodak TMax, or one of the cheaper Foma or Kentmere brands. That's your film. If you're in the UK, I'm gonna give you a couple of options for where to buy. One is First Call Photographic down in Taunton. Their shipping charges are a little bit on the high side, but you'll be able to get a whole bunch of stuff all at once. But their service is second to none. I mean, excellent. Another one is AG Photographic, and I'll leave some links in the in the description below. If you're in the US, then the go-to vendors seem to be people like KEH or B&H, and again I'll try to leave links in the description. And I'll try to offer some suggestions for Europe as well. I can't bring any to mind immediately in Europe. Maybe Moersch in Germany. Pretty sure they do film, but I'll look some up and I'll put them in the description. You're going to want some chemicals. You're going to want a developer. Whether you're in the UK or the US, I'm going to suggest that we use Adonal, also called Adonal. I'll leave some links in the description. And you're going to want, we will not worry about a stop bath at this particular point, we'll just use a rinse, but you're going to want to use a fixer. And for fixer, I'm going to suggest we use Ilford Rapid Fixer, and again I will leave some descriptions, some links in the description. Okay, so that's all of our chemicals. Now the final thing that I want to say is what we do with the film once we've exposed it, and for that we're going to need one of these. This is a Paterson System 4 daylight developing tank. This one's got a pull-off lid like this. That's for agitating the film. We won't worry about that just now. And your chemicals go in and out of here. This on this old style thing, the lid screws on, and there's a reel inside onto which your film goes. You have to get your film out of the film canister onto this reel, and I'll show you how to do that when the time comes. So you put it on there, then that goes in here. Now when that's in there, when the lid goes on, this little spout here sits inside that spindle and creates a light trap so that your chemicals can go in and out without having to be in the dark. So this is on the inside, your film is on there, put that on, screw the lid on, now your film is light safe and it can come out of the dark and you can use your chemicals. So how do we get the film into there? So you need one of those. This is a single reel tank. This one is a newer version, also Paterson System 4, and this is a 2-reel tank. Pretty much the same, doesn't matter which you get, but then we need to get the film into here. Now you might have a room that you can make dark. Now it has to be really dark, might be a walk-in closet, in which case you can go into the closet, turn its lights out, but make sure the lights outside are turned off as well. So if it's a bedroom closet, for example, that you can walk in, draw the bedroom curtains, do this at night time, leave the bedroom light off, close the doors, turn the closet light off, stay in there for 2 or 3 minutes, and if you still can't see your hand in front of your face, then it's dark enough to use film. I have an understairs cupboard. Maybe that would work. I don't use mine because I have another way of doing this, but that would be another possibility. If you don't have those, or the room that you might use isn't really dark enough, then you probably will want one of these. This is a dark bag or a film changing bag, and this particular one has a fold over flap like so, and in here there's a zip, and then that goes into the bag. So you put your dark tank in, you put your film in, you put something to open that canister inside there, everything goes in, zip it up, fold over the flap. I have another one of these that actually is a double thickness and has 2 zippers. Then here you've got these elasticated cuffs into which your hands will go, like so, and then everything in there happens in darkness by feel inside the bag, and that takes a little bit of getting used to, but I'm going to help you with that when the time comes. Okay, so that's everything that you're going to need in order to come along on this journey of film photography with me. I hope you're going to enjoy it. I'm looking forward to shooting with you and seeing what everybody gets. And the purpose of this first set of videos is to get you to the point of being able to shoot and develop your first roll of film. So you get your first set of negatives. We'll put them aside at that point and do some more sort of advanced things with a second roll of film before we start thinking about printing these. And then I'll go through that from the basics as well. Okay, I hope that's been of some interest. Bye for now.